And so we started with the arithmetic mean. Arithmetic mean, and that is just your average, right? You know, you've grown up calculating it as average, and the symbol for it is this, right? And you just add up sum of all values and then divide it by the number of values. Not a big deal. Just make sure you add your units when you answer it, like hours, percentages, minutes, whatever. You add that. And then we talked about median. For median, what's important to do before you determine the median? Yeah, you need to order, arrange. Exactly, yeah. So make sure you understand that. But that is really our middle value, right? Middle value, which means like if you look at data, we'll cut it straight in half. So half of them are here, half of them are above it, right? So that's what the important thing is about the median. And then the mode, most popular, right? Most popular, the number that occurs most often. And that one is very easy to see when you arrange. So I would arrange. If median is asked of you to find, arrange. There's a problem with median. If you have an odd number of values, there's just one from the set. You pick the one that's the middle. If it's even, I showed you the little trick, right? I'm not going to write it down here because it's going to be too busy here, but yeah, you need to figure out, you actually need to calculate the median when it's even. It's not going to be a number from your set. Some exceptions, actually. If it is like 28 and 28, if you find the middle, that's going to be 28, right? But most of the time it's not. It's something in between the two values you're considering. So that confuses students, like, hey, how come that number is not part of my set? Because you're trying to find the middle, right? The exact midpoint there. So we did this. What do we call these all collectively? Crickets, what? Yeah, central tendency, something before that. Measures of central tendency. All right. They're called MCTs, right? And what's that? Well, sometimes I just say which measure of central tendency is the best, and I just don't want you to that to throw you off, right? So it's measures of it's in your book too. At the very beginning, I talked about that, right? Measures of central tendency. So all of them try to find the middle, but sometimes due to outliers, the arithmetic mean is not good because it has those outliers that kind of skew it, right? It's like if you consider income, if you consider all of our incomes right here, and then Shifley comes and joins us just for this one class, like, hey, let's find the average income, right? Like a couple $100 a month, couple of $1,000 a month, millions a month, right? Mark Shifley, right? It's gonna make it look like we're doing pretty good in this room, but really it's just the one outlier that's making us look good, right? So average, to be honest, average, the government does not use average a whole lot. They use median way more. They want to try to find the median. What's the median income? Because then they know half of families will make less, half of families will make more than that number, right? So then they kind of find the midpoint there. Okay. And then, because of the outliers, we talked about trimmed mean, which is also the average. However, we omit the outliers. We omit the outliers, and we do that by trimming an equal amount of values from either end, right? So if you have two, and this is very obvious when you, right? You look at that data set and you're like, everything is kind of close together except for this one. So if you want to omit that one, you also have to cut the lowest, but this is your outlier. Not some students think it's 45 and 2 because I trimmed both. It's like, no, you want to get rid of it, therefore also a lower one. And then it's basically just the sum of this. So instead of having 6 values at the beginning, you're down to 4. Okay. And so you need to consider that your trimmed mean will be different than your arithmetic mean, guaranteed, right? Sometimes by lots, sometimes by just a little bit. It depends on how far away that outlier is. The further away from the number line, like if you had something like 1,000 here and everything else is in here, this is such a heavy upper outlier that when you cut this, the mean is going to actually come way back down, right? So it's almost like removing Shifley from the room. You remove Shifley, all of a sudden our average income is going to be way lower, right? No money or the least, right? Yeah. But it's the low one, we just do that to be fair to the data set, but it wouldn't really affect, even if we left that one in, right? But trimmed mean needs to be done that way. And then we talked about, what's the last one? Weighted mean. Weighted mean, there were two cases, but really they're all the same. I just treat them in two separate cases. One where you check if you have 100%, right? And the other one you have to figure out yourself. Notice this, guys. Every single time with weighted mean, you might have a table, you may not. But you will have to, like if you calculate it like this, you will be multiplying two things and then adding. Multiply two things, your score, for example, and the weight. The score you got on the assignment and the weight. The score you got on the essay and the weight, right? So that's what we do. So if it's something that adds up to 100%, right? Remember I told you you have a table and you check, oh, there's percentages, does one of them add up to 100? You will check for that. And if it is the case, you multiply them still. You always multiply like this or sideways. It depends on how the table is. You put them side by side. And then your last step in this particular case would be to divide by 100. Almost like a DJ here. And then the other one, weighted mean, where you don't have percentages, it will still be like this. You multiply the categories and then add, right? I'm sure if you type this into your phone, you get some kind of weird emoji, right? And the question with this one, this is the one that involves repetition, right? I will show you that in a bit in the notes. You're going to have to figure out, what do I divide by? What do I divide by? Will I have to add up this row or this row? Like, which ones of these rows will I divide by? And that's where you have to just look at what is the question asking you for. So for example, we talked about people, right? And working certain amount of hours. So when you multiply people and hours. So what is the question asking you? The average number of hours worked per person? If that's what you want left, then you need to add up all the people in your chart so that it cancels out like that and you're left with hours only, right? So basically this is, if I could summarize this, it's like just go ahead and multiply them all and add, right? That gives you 2 marks right there. And then if it's a percentage question and you have the 100, bingo, it's just 100. Just put it in there. If it's a repetition question, you're going to have to figure out which one of the 2 rows you're going to add up and put down here. Right? That is where you come in. Okay, so let's review this. So if you're on page 28, I actually want you to go back one question. Go back one question and just focus on this one here, on this middle question. So notice that we had number of students and hours studied per, like on average, right? So what we ended up doing is multiplied them all right away. We multiplied and came up with our totals here. Then I took these and added them all up here. That's going to be step number 1. There's actually 2 steps. Multiply, get your numbers, then add them all. That's your second step. The third step is to determine what goes here. Is it, I actually highlighted this in your notes, right? We ended up picking students. We added up this column here, 520, and we plugged that in there. And why did we end up going with students? The answer is right here. Because you said we multiplied number of students, right, times the hours, and we wanted hours to stay. That's why you divide by the number of students here. Okay. Okay. So notice that there's a question down here that did not have a chart, but this is like a chart. 2 tips of $6. That'd be 2 times 6. Let's do this one together. That way you have another example. If you have done this already, you just sit and relax, right? So it's 2 times 6 plus 3 tips of $8 plus 3 tips of 10 plus 6 tips of 12. Okay. And then you're going to divide by, let's see what you need to divide by. You know what? Sometimes students, they struggle with this, and I tell them, well, add up both categories and divide, and if the number is ridiculous, like if it doesn't make sense, maybe that's going to help you, right? So I'm going to do this. You multiplied the number of tips, right? Tips times the dollar amount you got. Okay, so what do you want? It says calculate the mean tip, like the mean amount you're getting. So actually you want to divide by tips in this case, because this is your average dollar amount per tip. Okay, so down here you'd have to add the 2, the 3 here. It's almost like you're considering this to be a table. And then you go 12 plus 24 plus 30 plus 72 over 6 and 6 is 12 plus 2 is 14. We have 14 tips that are considered. And what do we have here? 102, 126, 138. 138 divided by 14. And then the last step is to divide, and it's 9.86. That is the average that you wanted there. Okay. So just close your books. You can leave them on your desk, but just make sure you close them. You can have your study sheet. December 5th. That's right. Okay, let's go for this. So we have that Chris scored 82% on assignments, quizzes, ACs, and tests. Follow along, okay? 50% on the final exam. Calculate the final mark on the report card. So you can actually just put like a big X bar or weighted mean, it's up to you, but really you would take 82. Oh, sorry, I'm going to stick with my plan here. 82 times, this is multiplied by the 25%, okay? Plus 75 quizzes, 15, right? So you go 75 is what you scored and it has a weight of 15 to it. 87 on AC, so you go 87 times 10 plus 65 on tests, and that's worth 30%, and scored 50% on the exam, which is worth 20. So if you have that line there, you get 2 marks. The next line here is going to be, did you check to see which one added up to 100? Right? If there was one adding up to 100, and yes, there was one, like all these categories added up, right? Including that, they add up to 100%. So you know that you're gonna just have to divide the whole thing by 100. And so obviously you need to have the correct final for you to get this. So 6,995, if you do the top right, I would strongly recommend you do each bracket individually and then add it up. Okay? Okay, so you get 69.95%, which you can leave it like that, but really on the report card, it'd probably be 70, right? Like rounded to nearest whole. Either one is fine with me. If you left it as 2 decimals, that's fine. So I would say if you're showing me all these steps and you have the work that leads you to the final answer, right? That's when you get 3 out of 3. But the top here, multiplying and adding gets you 2. And then obviously dividing by 100 at the end, that would get you the other 1. And that always means that you need to have the correct final answer, right? Just showing the work and getting the wrong answer would you'd still lose 1 for sure. Okay, so there's that question. Then a class of ESMR4S, that's essential 40S, right? Had the following tests on the scores on the probability test. And so you would multiply across like this, okay? And regardless of how you did it, maybe I don't have those numbers individually. I wonder if I should. Oh, okay, I like that. Yeah, that's easy. 600? Okay. 92, I got that one. 550, I got that one. Yeah, thank you. So technically, this is when you show me your multiplying. That would get you a mark for sure. And then here's your average. When you take those numbers, I would very strongly discourage typing this in one shot, because if you make a mistake, I can't backtrack, right? If you showing me that you're adding them up, you get another mark, right? So multiplying 1, adding up another 1, and then we're gonna have to divide. So what is it asking? Calculate the average for the class. Average means percentage, right? In this case, that's what they want. So you actually have to divide by the number of students. That is 35, yes. Did you check to see if this added up to 100? Remember that trick? It didn't. You like first 2 numbers you add up, not 100. It's not gonna be divided by 100, right? That's the little trick that I gave you there. So if the 35 shows up, you get another mark for that. And here's where I do a little bit of cleaning up, right? You get 62.6%, which is approximately 63%, right? But that's the average for the class there. Let me just do this. You kept on multiplying percentage and students, right? The question asks you for the average mark. That's why you divide it by all of the students, right? And you're left with that. Okay, this is another way of looking at it. We should do this. This does not add up to 100, right? 100%. So we couldn't just multiply, add, and then divide by 100, right? You need one of them to add up to 100 to do that. So this page is out of 6, 3 and 3. Nice and easy. Next page. Rose kept track of her daily commute times. Commuting is when you're driving to work, when you're a commuting student at our campus, university, college, whatever. That means that you're driving in or using some kind of transportation to come to work or to school. Identify any outliers. You should have recognized that it's 45 minutes, right? That would be the outlier. Determine the mean, median, mode. Okay, so for the average, all you need to show me is this, 158 divided by 5, and that's 31.6 minutes. You get a mark for that. For the median, I don't know where you arranged. I arranged way up here. So we've got 25, 28, 28, 32, 45. Right? So the median, it's an odd number of values, so it is actually just 28 minutes. You get a mark for that. And the mode is 28 as well, because it's the most popular. You get a mark for that. So 1 mark for each done correctly. Calculate the trimmed mean. Various ways of doing that. You can show me right up here if you want to circle that that's the outlier, and then just say, hey, I'm going to trim. So I'm left with those 3 numbers, and that is 28 plus 28 plus 32 divided by 3. That's 88 divided by 3. That's 29.33 minutes. We expected that because the outlier was an upper outlier, so our average actually dropped, right? So you get 1 mark for this step, like showing me the step on what calculations are happening, and then another mark for actually getting the right answer. Yeah. Dashing through the snow. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay if we try and, like, our final answer, try not to do that. We round it. We call it, we truncate it. We cut it. Okay. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. We'll be reasonable today. Give a possible explanation as to why Rose might want the trimmed mean instead of the arithmetic mean, right? She might have had a flat tire on her way to work that day, or on her way to wherever, and not want to include the outlier, right? The outlier may be due to a car breakdown, making the mean travel time be greater than normal, right? You make some kind of reference that that outlier is pushing my average higher, and so that's why she would probably want it trimmed, because it's not an accurate representation of her commuting time. If it's a test, you might say, hey, might have been sick for part of the unit, so would like to omit that low test score, right, to have a higher average, right? In that case, in this case, you probably want a lower commuting time. And to prepare, I mean, we're talking not even 2 minutes difference, right? So it's not a big deal, but if you want to prepare to go to work and be on time, you probably want the trimmed mean that's more accurate. Okay. So give yourselves a mark there if there's something that makes reference to the difference between the two and the fact that the outlier being removed is a more accurate picture. Which MCT is not affected when removing the highest and the lowest value? Explain. Okay. Well, let's compare. The average is 29.33 versus 31.67, or sorry, 6 minutes, right? So that one is obviously going to fail. That one doesn't pass the test. The mode, what is the mode when you trim? You still have 28, right? When you trim your data set, you're left with these 3 here. So it's still, mode is still 28 versus 28. So no changes there. The median, do you remember my awesome visual with the median here, with this tape here? If you trim, the median doesn't affect, right? The middle stays the middle because you're taking the same amount on each end. The middle stays the middle. So the median is 28 versus 28. It's still the same. Okay. So you could say median is not affected. Okay. Median is not affected since you remove an equal amount of values from each end. That would be another mark. So if you told me mode or median, 1 mark. But then you need to have a good explanation as to why you say that it didn't change. If for mode, you'd say trimming the highest and the lowest did not affect the most popular values, something like that. Okay. So what are we at here? 2, and that's 3, 4, 5, 8, 9. 9. Hi. Sure.